I have a bit of a confession to make. I am what you might call an outsider when it comes to the sport of football. My husband will tell you it is not for lack of trying. I join you. Hear me saying this. I join you in taking tremendous pride in our local teams. I have cheered for the Packers my entire life while living in Wisconsin and South Dakota and Minnesota. But yet, when I am in the midst of a crowd of fans, when I am next to my family in the living room, which we will be today, watching this tremendous game on television, I have a sense that I lack something that true fans have, and I don't. It seems to be a connection that I would very much like to have, but it seems to be just beyond my grasp. I was explaining all of this to our mother yesterday, Brad, and she replied to me, Julie, you know what you need to do? You need to watch the Larry McCarran show. I said, the Larry what? The Larry McCarran show. He brings all the Packer players on. You get to know them as people rather than players. It's important. She's right. She's right. There's the connection. And she started to tell me about Aaron Rodgers and J.J. Watts. Am I saying this right? No. And Jordy Nelson, who's not playing today, right? Thank you. And what tremendous people they are. You hear about all these awful things, she said, but our Packers, they're good people. Oh. Again, I came away feeling like even my mother has something. I lost this gene somewhere along the way. So my quest to understand this devotion of fans to football reached a brand new height, truly, this past week. When I watched the Sunday game, and then noticed that I didn't say that I stayed up to watch it, because I didn't even know this was happening. I heard on Tuesday morning that there had been a huge upset in college football the night before. Many of you are nodding your heads. You know about this because you stayed up and watched it. In the college national championship game, Clemson defeated the Alabama Crimson Tide. Whew. It was, okay, some people are clapping. We know how some people feel about this now. It was headline news on Tuesday morning. My husband comes downstairs, not a fanatic, but certainly a fan of football himself. He had stayed up to watch the game. They're reporting about it on Good Morning America or whatever I have on at the moment, and his animated account on Tuesday morning of last night's game renewed my interest in understanding what it is, this fan devotion. And not only a devotion, but just an understanding of the game. I listened to Mrs. Jilks up in the tower, accounting the game, every football game at Westby High School, and I say, oh my gosh, how does she know this? I've watched this game for 40 years. I don't get it. Run 5 yards, fall down, pile up. Run 5 yards, fall down, pile up. I still don't get it. So my husband, when he comes downstairs Tuesday morning, and he is so animated about this game, this college game, I said, okay, this is it. I have to understand this. I want whatever it is that you all have. So then I was reminded of this book that has sat on my shelf for years. Again, a sign of my lack of devotion, I suppose. But there is a book that has been on my office shelf for years, and its title is this, Rammer Jammer, Yellow Hammer. Some of you are already laughing because you know where that comes from. I didn't. But this book was strongly recommended to me some years ago by a colleague who herself was trying to understand the devotion of fans to football. So I came to the office Tuesday morning, I grabbed the book off my shelf, I immediately sat down, didn't even check my messages, started reading, intent on understanding what is this devotion that people have. So the author of Rammer Jammer Yellowhammer is a journalist by the name of Warren St. John. And he is a devoted Alabama Crimson Tide fan himself. And this is the question that he sought to answer in writing this book. What is it about sports that turns otherwise sane people into raving lunatics? So I have no illusions that I will become a raving football lunatic. I'm just hoping to become a fan, a real fan. And my hope is that in understanding devoted fans, I might glean a little bit of whatever it is that has grasped hold of them. And I figure what better group to study than the Alabama Crimson Tide football team and their fans. So seeking answers, I sat down and started to read Rammer Jammer Yellowhammer. The book's title gets its name from a now defunct Alabama newspaper, the Rammer Jammer, and also the Alabama state bird, the yellowhammer. You'll find these words, I discovered, in the Alabama fight song. You'll also find other words in the Alabama fight song that I cannot share with you today. So I am still making my way through this book, but so far it has only served to pique my interest in fan devotion. The book's jacket gives a great glimpse into what the author finds in his journey. It reads like this. In seeking to answer the question, why do fans care? Warren St. John seeks out the roving community of RVers who follow the Alabama Crimson Tide football team from game to game to game throughout the entire season. A movable feast of Weber grills and igloo coolers, these are serious, hardcore football fans. They arrive on Wednesday for Saturday's game. Such as the Reeses, who skipped their own daughter's wedding because it coincided with a Bama game. But some people that the author encountered said, who does she think she is, scheduling her wedding on the third weekend in October when everybody knows that Alabama plays Tennessee on the third Saturday in October? Again, I don't understand. But I keep reading. Again, about Ray Prudat, the Episcopal minister who watches the games on a television beside the altar while he is officiating at weddings. I promise, if we ever do your weddings, we won't have the game on up there. Or John Ed, the wheeling and dealing ticket scalper whose access to good seats puts him on par with power to the governor. Well, in no time at all, the author, Warren St. John, buys his own RV. It is a $5,500 decrepit machine, which he nicknames the Hog. And he starts to join this caravan for a full football season and chronicles the world of the extreme fan and learns that in the shadow of the stadium, all of this devotion can seem strangely normal. So you might be wondering now, what does all of this have to do with Jesus? And I've been wondering that myself, because for as long as I've been a pastor, I have sought to understand, truly, earnestly understand, what it is that makes people flock to the stadium. I want to understand. And so I've been asking myself this a time or two this week in the process of writing this sermon. And on Tuesday, I asked myself, what in the world, Lord, does fan devotion have to do with me writing this sermon? Why can't I get this book out of my head? God works in mysterious ways. I picked up, after the book, the gospel for today. In our gospel reading today, Jesus is fresh out of the water. He has just been baptized by John. This is the start of his ministry on earth. And John the Baptist is now truly walking ahead of Jesus, and he is proclaiming, shouting in the way that only John the Baptist could, "Here is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." And John then joins his own disciples in asking them to take away their allegiance to him and give it all to Jesus. So with John and his former disciples now pressing in on and following Jesus, Jesus turns and asks them, "What are you looking for?" And they reply, "Where are you staying?" I was literally awake the other night thinking something kind of humorous would be, well, I have a room at the local Motel 6. They said they'd leave the light on for me. But that's an aside. These are the things that keep me up at night. So Jesus says, "Come and see." And they go to the house where Jesus is staying. Along the way, Andrew, who is now a follower of Jesus, bears witness to his brother Simon. And he simply says, "We have found the Messiah, the one whom we have waited for." And he tells his brother, and he tells his friend, and pretty soon a whole new community is formed. A new community, all by this one simple invitation to come and see. Well, I do enjoy watching the game of football. I really think it's the sports devoted fans that most intrigue me and draw me in. For many, football seems to bring a fulfillment and a joy that I would truly like to know more about. Folks might argue that being a devoted fan comes with a price that is greater than admission. Fans endure late nights. They endure being misunderstood by those who do not truly grasp their devotion. They endure heartbreaking losses and mountaintop experiences so great that other things in life don't quite compare. And as I thought about that, I started to understand a little bit better what it might be like to be a devoted fan. Perhaps devotion to a sports team isn't so difficult to grasp after all. In one of the first chapters of Rammer Jammer Yellowhammer, Warren St. John explains the arduous process of seeking to find an Alabama fan or fans willing to share their RV with him for one weekend so that he might also experience whatever it is that happens in this traveling Crimson Tide community. He spends hours on the phone, hours and hours and hours, going through a list of people who are part of this RV community, and each one says, "I'm sorry, we just don't have enough room. We just don't have enough room." Finally, he lives in New York. He reached someone who lived in South Carolina, and they were willing, well, the husband hadn't told his wife yet, but he was willing to take Warren St. John. If he were to drive from New York to South Carolina, he was willing to take him to Alabama in his RV. The man arrived at his house. Warren St. John arrived at the man's house, and he said, "I haven't been brave enough to tell my wife yet that you're here." Warren St. John slept out in the RV. But eventually, he earned the trust of the spouse, and the three of them traveled to Alabama to watch the Crimson Tide. So a positive weekend excursion led the author to purchase an RV, the Hog, on his own, and join this community on wheels. Through that one invitation to come and see, he found the community that he was longing for. And all of this brings me to this point, that less than 1 month ago, we celebrated the birth of Jesus Christ. Expecting his arrival at any moment, his parents knocked on the door of an innkeeper. The innkeeper unknowingly turned Jesus away because there was just simply not enough room. As we begin this new year, perhaps we, the church, and by church I mean us as individual Christians, as congregations, and as Christians who are the body of Christ all over this world, we who are the church, perhaps we might ask ourselves this question, and I begin with myself. In what ways are we saying, I'm sorry, there just isn't enough room? What are the things we need to let go of in order to make the room? And how can we make room for those who are on the outside, those who might even be in our pews, who are wondering what all of this is about? How do we make this real? How do we connect to people so that they can connect to God? How can we make room for those who are earnestly seeking to understand who we are and what this is all about and what God's new community is all about? Because I know from experience over the past 12 years with you that you have incredible things to share with those who are seeking and wondering what it is that this is all about. Invite them to come and see. Thanks be to God.